To make this frosting, you'll need egg whites, shortening, margarine, confectioner's sugar, and flavorings, and some tools to decorate. I use scissors, cake decorating tubes and tips, and food colorings. I also have this handy dandy Lazy Susan that makes the job much easier. Measure out 1 cup Crisco into a mixing bowl and 1 stick margarine. I mix these together really well so that they're very nicely blended. You don't want smears of margarine. Normally I use 4 egg whites to make this frosting, but to reduce the risk of salmonella, I'm going to use 3/4 of a cup of liquid pasteurized egg white. Add the egg white to the Crisco margarine mixture and blend well, but be very careful. It will splash if you do it too fast. So I put on my guards to keep the splashing down. Mix that nicely and then add your flavoring. I use vanilla, but you can use lemon or almond, whatever flavoring you like. And then slowly add the 2 pounds of confectioner's sugar. If you add it too fast, you will create a puffy cloud of sugar, so be careful. Occasionally scrape down the sides of the bowl to make the mixture nicely blended. Keep blending until your frosting is nice and fluffy. The secret to a moist cake is to freeze the cake before you frost it. This also helps reduce the amount of crumbs that pick up while you're frosting. I use an offset spatula to frost using my Lazy Susan. You just use a gentle back and forth motion to spread the frosting in a nice even layer across the cake. Don't worry if it's not perfect. Now I'm going to put an edging on the cake. I'm going to use the rosette tip. Load the frosting into your tube or your bag. I find the tubes much easier, but they're hard to find. This method uses a simple squeeze-pull technique. You put the tip right next to the cake, squeeze, and then pull it toward you. Then you start the next rosette scroll at the base of the first one. Work your way around the cake. The Lazy Susan helps. To color your frosting, always start with the smallest amount you think you might need because you can't take it out. Mix it well until it's nicely blended. The green I'm going to use for writing and leaves, and then I'm also going to mix up some pink and use that for roses. I find that the frosting maintains the proper consistency if I store it in the freezer or the refrigerator between uses, and keep it covered so it doesn't dry out. If it dries out, it's very difficult to use in the tips. They get clogged. I'm going to use the rose tip to start making some roses. When you assemble your tube, you need to line up the tip with the pull with the plunger. To make a rose, I use a cuticle stick, or you can use a simple chopstick. Starting with the wider end of the rose tip on the bottom, angle the tip at about a 45-degree angle to your stick. Squeeze the frosting out, turn the stick, and then bring the tip down onto the stick. Go back about halfway on the last petal and repeat that step. So you're going to spin the stick back, squeeze, pull down, spin the stick back, squeeze, pull down. A classic mistake of beginners with this is to work your way down the stick, but you don't want to do that. You'll end up with a stick full of frosting, not a rose. Add a little bit of base frosting to the rose. Take your scissors and gently slide the scissors up underneath the flower to lift it off the stick, and then transfer it to the cake. You simply push it off with the stick onto the cake. To make your next one, just clean off your scissors, your stick, and your tip, and start again. The important motion is the back and forth of the stick. Notice how it's rotating back with each petal that I make. You want to go back to the center of the last petal and always down to the stick. It takes quite a bit of practice, and your best ally is a nice, stiff, cold frosting. If it gets too soft, put it in the freezer for a little while and start again. They just won't work with mushy, soft frosting. And you can assemble your cake any way you'd like. Put them individually or in clusters. There are several different edging techniques, and this is on the second cake that I'm making today. It's more of a paisley pattern. It's that scroll, but with a swirl to it and back and forth. And then in this one, I'm going to fill the gap because I didn't like the way it looked. You can also make rose buds with that same rose tip. You just use a 2-petal, simple back and forth motion to make what looks like a little rosebud. Now, using the leaf tip, I'm going to start at the base of the flower, squeeze, and then pull away using an in and out motion to make it look like a leaf. There's no rule of where you need to put a leaf, whatever looks good to you. Then, using the writing tip, I'm going to add simple stems to my rosebuds to make them look more like a rosebud. One little pull down each side, and then one in the center. Then add little leaves with the leaf tip again. This is just a simple pull of the leaf tip, no back and forth motion. For writing, I always move to a lower surface. I can't write up on my counter, so I move it to my kitchen table. Then steadying with one hand and squeezing with the other hand on the plunger, I form my letters. I also hold my breath while I'm doing this so I get a nice smooth script. You want to start your writing very close to the cake, but not right in the frosting. That way the letters lay nicely on top of the frosting without going into it. There you are. Happy spring. Cupcakes are a great way to experiment with different decorating techniques. Use the same basic technique for putting your frosting on, and then this one uses a rosette. It's a simple squeeze, pull. You want to start down low and pull into a nice peak. And cover them nice and closely. You can also use concentric circles. Just spiral your frosting using that same rosette tip outward from the center to cover the cupcake. This is a grass tip. You just squeeze and pull like the one in the background there. This is going to turn into a daffodil. Use the writing tip to just swirl a little pile of frosting and then add little points to the top. Normally it would be yellow. Using the leaf tip, but without the in and out motion, you form petals for your daffodil. I've also decorated a sugar egg with all of these tips using different techniques. Cake decorating is all about having fun and experimenting. You can add flowers, you can add jelly beans if it's Easter time. You can do whatever you want.
So good.